Hi, everyone. Welcome to Shimmer Girl Talks. Today's topic is a sermon that Devon Franklin did. I'm not sure when, but I'm going to post it in my description box. And if you're not familiar with Devon Franklin, which I'm sure most of you are, he was married to Megan Good, the actress Megan Good. And he is also the one, to my knowledge, who sought the divorce, which is pretty odd. Because typically it's women who file for divorce at about a 80% clip. And from what I've read in articles online, not saying it is true, but Megan Good did not want this divorce. So that's what makes this particular topic that I would like to discuss all the more, I guess, ironic or whatever. I don't think that's the word that I want to use. But he is a pastor in the pulpit simping, and he is pandering to women. And I did a video probably close to 5 years ago now called "Is the Church Keeping Women Single?" But I'm going to try to, I took notes on his sermon so I can kind of touch bases on it. But I just want to talk about him and Megan at first. It's my understanding, again, this is just stuff that I got offline like anybody else. A lot of the women used to come for Megan, the women at his church, the way she dressed, like the fact that she was an actress, probably doing love scenes and stuff like that. And this is one reason why you have to be careful about allowing people between you and your spouse. And it's also important to keep, your marital business to yourself. I don't know what went on in their marriage, but I'm going to talk about his sermon in a minute, because what he did was he mixed some biblical truths with some sisterhood echo chamber mumble jumble. What he was saying was right out of the handbook of the sisterhood, in my opinion. And I'm not going to discuss his whole sermon. Like I said, I'm going to post it for your, so you can look at it yourself if you want to. But one of the things that he said was rushing people into being couples early. He said that this is what the church does. And the reason why I think that that's kind of dangerous advice, what he said, is because 9 times out of 10, the women, because he was directing this at women, are not sitting in that church as virgins or being celibate. And what is going to happen a lot of times is their flesh is going to burn, and they're going to end up in sexual situations and end up with a child or children, and still wanting a husband at the end of all of that. Now, back in the 90s or so, when I was more active going to church and stuff, my work schedule does not really permit me to go to church the way that I used to. So this isn't a case of, I'm not going to church because it's hypocrites in there and stuff. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's my work schedule. And yes, that's an excuse, because I used to work with this one lady who would bring her church clothes to work, and after working a 12-hour shift, she would put on her clothes and she would go straight to church, so bless her heart, but that's another topic. So, but, back in the 90s, when I was a single woman sitting up in that church and wanting a husband myself, sitting with other single women who wanted a husband, a lot of the people got married young. And I realized yesteryear is not today. Back then, particularly when you had people who grew up in the church, that's typically where they got their spouse. And so they were able to marry young because the families knew each other. Or they visited other churches, sister churches and stuff like that, and they were able to get a spouse like that. Or, well, that was the main way to get a spouse back then. Not so much, I don't want to say really not so much now, because you have a lot of women, I think today, no, it happened back then too, but today coming into the church after years of running the streets and having children and stuff like that. So for him to say that the church is rushing people into being into a couple, I felt like that was, I guess, disingenuous, because if no place else, the church should be encouraging being a couple and teaching you how to be a couple and being married under God. God, husband, wife, then children. But so I'm gonna get to that. Like I said, he was in the sisterhood echo chamber. I heard a lot of that throughout this sermon of his. Another thing is, which I did agree with him on this a little bit, not equipping them to be a good single. Now, he didn't really go into detail on that. So let me make a speculation on this. By good single, does he mean refraining from sexual desire and stuff like that? Or the way that I think that he meant it was just be in your single season until God sends you a spouse, which is, I agree with that. Particularly, don't be out there, in sexual sin and stuff like that. But that's another topic. People are going to live how they're going to live, but I just think that his sermon, and I'm going to discuss a few more things, I just feel like his sermon is setting up a lot of women to fall into, men too, but see, and this is something else. A lot of women want to compare themselves to what men do, and then women are ultimately the ones who get hurt a little bit more, because men can be out there being sexually free. It's still wrong in God's eyes, but it does not hurt men emotionally the same way that it will hurt women. But that's another topic. So another thing that Devon Franklin said, like when he said when married people would come to you, he was directing this at women. Why are you still single? And then he flippantly said that you should turn it around on them. Well, why are you still married? And this is something that's the sisterhood, basically saying you're just married just to say that you're married and you're not happy and this, that, and the other. That's a straight out the sisterhood handbook or whatever. He went into that sisterhood echo chamber and he pulled this foolishness out. At the end of the day, most women, whether they admit it or not, want a husband. I didn't say all, because you do have some women who are perfectly content not being married, not having a husband, but they're still getting their back blew out somewhere. And somewhere down the line, they are going to want something more serious, but that's another topic. And, so he also said to add on what I just said about, well, why are you still married? He said misery loves company, as if implying that married people are miserable. This is something that I hear bitter women who don't have a husband, never had a husband, have. And for this to be a man saying this, he is pandering heavily to women. And what I like to tell women is you need to be careful about their advice and where you're getting your advice from. If you're getting advice that gives you the warm fuzzies and it makes you feel good, I'm talking about in pertaining to wanting a husband or something, you need to be cautious about that. Because if it's not like maybe like getting you to think, giving you food for thought, maybe stinging you a little bit, like Kevin Samuels, that's why Kevin Samuels was hated so much, because it made women think about, okay, well, maybe I'm not in a position to be a wife right now. Maybe the man that I want is not going to choose me because I've been out there living a certain way. And the church should try to get back to trying to teach women and men, because I know y'all get triggered, but stop comparing yourselves to men. Another story. But the church should be about trying to encourage being a couple, being a wife, mother for her husband. What I heard in his sermon was a man encouraging women to not only be single. We know what happens a lot of time in singleness. Women are getting their backs blew out. They're getting jaded, and it's getting harder and harder for them to maybe procure a husband because they're laying up with a man that they have no business laying up with, when God may want to send her a husband, but she's still fooling with somebody over here or over there or back there, or you know what I mean. And then another thing, and it's more to say to his sermon, but I'm going to leave on this last note. He said, society wants women to believe that you're broken if you're not with somebody. At the end of the day, most women want to be partnered up. And I did not say all women, because I do realize that you have women out there who are very defiantly, I'm single by choice, I'm glad to be single, I'm fabulous single, and all of that stuff. I'm talking to the women who want a spouse. Devon Franklin, much like a lot of those other male panderers, are trying to line their pockets and they're trying to make you feel good. My advice, though his advice was not always biblical, it wasn't biblical. If you are a woman and you want to hear advice from a man that's going to actually lead you towards the actual marriage, I personally suggest Kevin Samuels. Or do what I did. Look at the married women in your circle who that you know are in healthy, average, good marriages, because what Devon Franklin said and what so many women that he was pandering to said, these people will have you feeling like every marriage is just downtrodden and broken and misery and all of that stuff. Look to the women that you can learn from in how to be a wife, and of course keep God in it, for the ones of you who are believers. But that was my topic for today, and I'm sure I missed out on some key points. Like I said, I'm going to post it in the description box. Again, he told some biblical truths, and then he took some liberties with those truths to pander. But check out my other videos. Make sure you vibe, like, share, subscribe, and tell me your thoughts. And I will talk to you later. Bye.